I've been telling the story of Bull trying to get me to move in with him early in my term at High Desert State Prison. I wanted to take a moment and discuss sexual assault in prison. This is a subject that I've dealt with at length, so I'll be brief. I've mentioned before that I never saw overt sexual assault or physical rape while incarcerated, and to my knowledge, it never happened on a yard that I was on. That said, what I did see was covert sexual assault and implicit rape, by which I mean that sexual predators, they looked for people who were gullible or weak or vulnerable in some way, and they used manipulation techniques and social leverage to try and make them more vulnerable and more dependent on them. And then they used that vulnerability as leverage to get what they wanted from their victims. This happens in CDC, and it's not surprising, and it's unfortunate. I believe that Bull had pegged me as a potential victim for this form of assault, and that he was trying to get me to live with him to isolate me from other people. Perhaps because of my youth and the fact that I kept to myself, I was quiet, shy even, and I was pretty small for 20 years old. I would have described myself as wiry, and some people would have said that was generous. As a result of Bull's shenanigans, I ended up having to move out of the cell that I was in with Blinky and get a new cellie. And I will continue that story later in my videos, but over the course of the next couple of months, Bull did continue his inappropriate actions and advances, and I wanted to tell the rest of that story. After he and I had walked, and I had told him that I didn't want to live with him, he'd told my cellie Blinky that he and I had talked, and it had caused some problems for me. But after that, he and I didn't really socialize much, and things seemed fine. In fact, a couple of weeks later, he asked if he could borrow a couple of soups and a bag of beans from me for he and his cellie because they were low on food. This is a common request amongst inmates, especially people who are even a little friendly, and it was no big deal. And he gave me the stuff back a couple of weeks later, just like he said he would. While I was speaking to him on that occasion, he asked if I'd mind selling him some apples because he was going to make up a batch of Pruno. High Desert gave so many apples. You'd get 2 apples a day there, and I really didn't mind coming off of some, so I told him, yeah, sure thing, have all the apples he wants. Whenever he came off of his batch and had some wine, he offered to drink some of it with me because I'd given him a good deal on the apples, and while ordinarily I really tried to avoid this type of thing, it seemed like a bridge mending exercise. Also, he was a porter. He knew all the cops, and he made wine all the time, and whenever he did, he'd just sit out at the day room table and drink. I'd literally seen officers come over and ask if he was going to drink the whole bottle of wine himself or he was going to share with other inmates. I sat at the table, drinking with him, and strangely, an officer came over. Said, hey, Channel, Bull. I don't remember what Bull's last name was. I'm sure the officer didn't actually call him Bull, but whatever. Channel, Bull, you guys can't be drinking out here, man. You gotta go up to a cell and, get out of the way. The sergeant's gonna be coming around. This was weird. I'd literally never seen this happen. I'd seen Bull drinking out in the day room at least 20 times. Bull casually suggested we could go up to his cell and finish drinking. After all, his cellie was at work, and we'd have the place to ourselves, and God, no. I politely refused, and he was just a little insistent, and I was just a little bit more politely refusing. And that was the end of it, but it was another example of an awkward social situation that extended just a little bit further than it should have. And I was skeptical that the officer had come over and said that to us without Bull suggesting it to him beforehand. Regardless, I resolved to just not talk to Bull anymore, not socialize with him. That was also an option. Except that, I guess about 2 weeks later, I was out doing dips. And just walking past, he told me, good form, son! And he was gone, so I really didn't stop and address it, but again, it was with the son thing. I resolved that the next time that Bull was inappropriate, I was going to put my foot down and express that we really needed to have a line in the sand, because the last thing that I needed was to be the guy who got a reputation as, you can make that kind of joke about him, he doesn't mind. It was just the next day, one day later, after making that resolution, that I was going to take a shower in the evening during day room. The way the shower line works, who will shower, what order they'll shower in, is really very informal. Whoever gets in the shower first, somebody comes up and says, "Hey, can I be after you?" And the guy says, "Yeah, sure thing." And so on down the line. It's just informal. I'm after Frank, and Bob's after me, and then Jim's after Bob. I was at the end of the shower line and getting ready to get in, talking to Stu, the guy that had the keys for the building. He and I were acquainted. And Derek and Bull came by. Bull stopped and went, "Hey, Aaron, can I get in the shower after you, man?" That's no big deal. It's a very common request. And yeah, sure thing. And as he was walking away, he stopped, and it was a little bit scripted. It seemed like he was planning on saying this. He looked back and good and loud said, "I don't know, man. I might have to just get in the shower with you instead of after you. You're looking pretty good." This was a moment where I had to draw a line in the sand, and while I was generally a very passive, laid-back guy, I was angry. This was rude, and it really was in front of everybody. And so I took a moment and thought about the threat, essentially, that I was going to make. And I told Bull, "Hey, Bull, look, I get you're joking, man, but seriously, don't step in the shower while I'm getting dressed or undressed, because I'll take it serious, man. I'll think you're doing something." And Bull got a little tough guy, which you would expect. He said, "Oh, yeah, man, what are you going to do?" And no, man, you're hearing me wrong. I promise I'm not trying to be a tough guy here. We got a hands-off policy, and if you come in, I have to assume you're coming in to do something. I can't just fight you. I've got to try and kill you. That's the rule. So I imagine I'd take my towel and try and get it wrapped around your head, get your balance, and bounce you off a wall a couple of times. And once you're dazed, I'd just against the floor with my towel wrapped around your head. I'd give real good odds that you'd be dead before the cops got there. And I'm naked, you're clothed, I'm real sure I'm not picking up too serious of a charge over this. And I don't mean this in a disrespectful way. Don't come in the shower, man, please. That was a long speech. I think he actually interrupted at one point, and I yelled back at him, but that's essentially what I said. I never had a problem with Bulligan. He might have never spoken to me after that, honestly. I think he was on the yard for about another 4 months before his points dropped. If we're being honest, this was a bluff more than anything else. I mean, I wasn't going to hurt the guy. At least I hope I wasn't going to have to, and I don't think I could have. The most likely result of this would have been him coming in the shower and bouncing me off every wall because he outweighed me by a good amount. But that anger, that willingness to take it to 10, to say, well, win, lose, or draw, we're both going to be real unhappy with the outcome, that was a valuable tool in that exact scenario. I remember Lao Tzu said, "A wise man is never angry. A wise soldier is never angry." I had a lot of time to read whenever I was locked up. I suppose it's one of the few good things you can say. So I've got a million quotes like that. I bet later on he said, "A wise man's always angry." That's just how that Bushido philosophy works. On this occasion, not only was I angry, but I allowed the anger to control my actions at least a little bit, and I think it was unwise. This quite reasonably could have ended up with him calling my bluff and hurting me instead of realizing that I was not a good victim. As you go through your day-to-day life, if you have to utilize your anger, it's a tool. Maybe it gets you to where you need to be. But remember that it's never worth sacrificing control over. Because if you are out of control, you're not using your anger. Your anger is using you.